There's no way that any American kid gets, through, grows up without reading about the Three Musketeers. Every young boy in America wants to be a musketeer, which is kind of funny to me because it sounds like, most young French boys grow up wanting to be cowboys. So we need to have some kind of an exchange program or something. I don't know what to do about that, but that was one of my favorites. And then Les Miserables, with Jean Valjean was another. And I think what it was is those two characters, Athos from the Three Musketeers, and Jean Valjean were characters I drew from when I was assembling the sheriff, when I was assembling the protagonist for the novels that I write. And I think one of the main reasons was that both of these characters had a history. Both of them carried a certain sadness, within them. And I think that's kind of what I was looking for with this sheriff of mine. I didn't want him to be James Bond. I didn't want him to be one of these 6'2" of twisted steel and sex appeal kind of characters. I wanted him to be damaged goods. I wanted him to be more human. And I think that that's one of the things that French literature always has done very well, like that is portraying multidimensional characters, with histories, with sadnesses, which makes them that much more appealing. At least it does to me. Each one of the books that I write, even though I write a series, of books, one of the things I do is I try and make sure that each book is different from all of the previous books. I think it's fair to insult the intelligence of the reader to just write the same book over and over and over again. It drives me crazy. And I'm a reader too. And I don't know how many times I've started a series of books that starts out really well like that, but then after a while, it just kind of seems to fall apart, or it gets boring, or you can kind of tell the author really isn't interested in the characters or the place, anymore. And so when I got to that third book, I think it was time to maybe try something a little bit different, in the sense that, Westerners, within the context of the West are one thing, but Westerners in the context of another place, can sometimes be more revealing. And it's not that, the whole idea of a cowboy being plucked up and taken away and dropped into a city is a new idea. It's been done before, but I don't think it's been done very realistically. It's usually, comedic. It's usually not very realistic. It's kind of a heightened, and I just didn't think it had been done very well. And so I thought, I'm going to take a crack at that and see how it turns out. And I've always thought about my sheriff, my Wyoming sheriff, as being kind of a world-class detective. I mean, he is a Hercule Poirot. He is a Sherlock Holmes. He's one of those guys like that. But he just happens to live in the least populated county in the least populated state in America. So he doesn't get as many chances maybe to prove it as maybe an NYPD cop or a Los Angeles cop or a San Francisco cop or a Parisian investigator. And so I thought, okay, if I drop him off in the middle of this sixth largest city in the United States, Philadelphia, how will he do? And he did pretty well.
That's my steak, Valance.
You heard him, dude. Pick it up.
It's not going to be very cutting edge. I have to admit that an awful lot of the older films are, the ones that I really enjoy. Mostly black and white. I love, John Ford's westerns. I like Anthony Mann's westerns. I like the more psychologically complex, westerns. I have to admit, because I like the more psychologically, complex western writing. Walter Van Tilburg Clark, somebody who wrote The Oxbow Incident, Track of the Cat. Those characters, they were a little edgy, they had things wrong with them. I don't care too much, for the superhero cowboys that are, all good guys or all bad guys. I like the kind of gray areas in between, like that. And, Dorothy Johnson, like that, who wrote The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, and, my gosh, A Man Called Horse, like that, in a number of different pieces. Jack Schaefer, who wrote Monty Walsh. Shane, those are some of my favorites, I have to admit. I mean, I grew up, watching westerns like that because that's, kind of what I was interested in like that. But it doesn't mean I don't enjoy other things like Citizen Kane or, some other black and white films. I'm generally useless as far as like coming up with actors' names, because when they started doing the TV show, they asked me, which actors I thought, would be right for Walt, and everybody I kept naming had been dead for 40 years, so it was of limited assistance. Favorite word. Oh, that's a tough one. Huh. I know what Vic's favorite word would be. Waltz, I don't know. Let's see. Tenacity. My favorite sound. Meadowlarks. There's a song, there's a particular bird, and I'm sure it's here in France too, but it's a meadowlark in the US, like that. And when it first shows up in the spring, that's when you know that spring is actually there. And, you know, and the ranch is, you know, up above 4,000 feet. I mean, it's really high altitude, you know, so there's a lot of snow and the mountains are there. And so it's very cold through the majority of the winter. And so that first meadowlark that I hear, that I know that it's spring, that's probably it. Yeah, this is you know, this is my life. This is, you know, what I do. Look at, it's my hat, you know, and I got let's see, 3 others. Okay, so I can, you know, cycle them out, you know, and wear different ones, like for different jobs, like that. But yeah, I don't know, it's pretty handy. Look at, in all actuality, look at, I mean, there's a reason why, you know, guys in, you know, that part of the world have been wearing this type of hat for an awfully long time. But I have to also admit, like that I was at the Pantheon, like that, and I was talking to one of the security guards up there, and you know, he asked me about being from Wyoming and all this, you know, and I said yes, like that, and he looked at me and he says, you know, you're not the first guy in high-heeled boots like that and a floppy hat to be in Paris, like that. And I was like, yeah, I kind of figured that. Like, my favorite writing. Absolutely, there's no question about it. It's got to be the writing.